Up in the sky, is it a bird? Is it a plane? Is it SuperDude's first fantasy drafted DC Injustice 2 character? Of course it is. My hand. No. What's going on, Super Friends? It's SuperDude here again in the Fortress of Broitude, bringing you... What? What is the fantasy draft, I hear you asking? You're all back there with your hands raised, asking questions. What is the fantasy draft? What's the point of it? This, that, the other. Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, Super Friends. I'm going to answer all of the questions in the time that we've got. So, what is it, essentially? What is the fantasy draft? What am I doing? Basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking characters that I want to see in Injustice 2. I'm basically fantasy drafting my own Injustice 2 roster out of different characters. I may use... I'll mention the fantasy draft list is going to probably have some characters that have been on it already, that have been in Injustice. Okay, basically, here's what I'm doing. Ready? For the first few ones, I'm taking characters that are not yet announced for Injustice 2, that I don't think are going to be announced for Injustice 2, or that I would just plain want to see in Injustice 2, whether they're going to be announced or not. And I'm taking them, and I'm making bio videos and things like I did for the characters we've got, Swamp Thing, Cheetah, and Dr. Fate, Black Canary, yada yada. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing I'm going to be fantasy drafting these characters, making videos for them, discussing how I would play them, how I would, basically as if I was designing the character, how would it fit and function and that sort of stuff. What would it look like? How would he play? What would all this stuff. What I'm really gonna do is I'm going to, excuse me, something in my nose there. I'm going to take these characters, and I'm going to be making fantasy draft versions of these characters. Now, here's the fun part. I'm going to be taking these fantasy draft characters, and I'm going to be writing my own Injustice 2 story mode with them. It's really bouncy. What am I going to do with the characters that I draft? How are they going to fit in? This, that, the other thing. What would I do with them? What would their story arcs be? That whole spiel. That whole shtick. And I'm basically going to be doing rundowns of these characters. It's going to be what Aaron wants to see in Injustice 2. Starting with the first one. You'll get an idea sort of as we go along with this first one. And that's why I'm going to have fun with this first one. So this first one is the character I want more than anything in Injustice 2. Burnt orange t-shirt as a hint. That's what that color is. That is burnt orange. And so the first character that we're going to be bringing you is... Drumroll. HeatWave! Woo! HeatWave! Yes, I'm going to be doing HeatWave first, because it's my video, so meh, if you don't like it. Alright. I've got his origins pulled up here. I'm going to be doing the origins, and then I'm going to be talking about why I like him as much as I do. And I'm going to be getting into all of his origins. All of his origins. So, here we go. We're going to start at the beginning. Born on a farm outside of Central City, Mick Rory... Oh, outside of Central City? Oh, that's where we're at. Mick Rory became fascinated with fire as a child. This fascination turned into an obsession, and one night he set his family's home ablaze. His destructive fixation was so great that he simply watched the flames engulf his house instead of running to get help. His entire family died in the fire. After this event, Rory went to live with his uncle. His pyromania continued, and he was forced to run away after locking a schoolmate in his house and setting it on fire because the boy locked Rory in a meat locker during a field trip as a prank. He took a job as a fire eater with a traveling circus. This did not last long, as he ended up setting the circus on fire. Of course he did. It was these events that made him desperate to fight his fire obsession And after seeing the rogues in action in Central City, he decided to use his mania to become a supervillain. He created a protective costume made of asbestos. This was back before the dangers of asbestos were really known. And he built a gun-sized flamethrower and became HeatWave. As he was committing crimes in Central City, it was inevitable that he would run into the Flash, which he did quite regularly. Subsequently, he also ended up in jail quite regularly due to the Flash. He became a rival of Captain Cold due to his aversion to cold temperatures. It was Captain Cold who introduced HeatWave to the Rogues. Eventually, Mick went straight, due largely to the manipulations of the Top. He took a job as a firefighting consultant using his vast knowledge of fires and heat. He also became good friends with Barry Allen, who he had discovered was the Flash years before. All good things must come to an end, and Rory succumbed to an offer by Abracadabra of gaining respect and infamy in the world. He and 4 of the members of the Rogues sacrificed himself quite unwittingly to unleash the demon Neron, setting off the events of the Underworld Unleashed. Later, Neron returned the soulless bodies of the 5 to Earth in a plan to force Flash into a deal. The 5 rogues each possessed incredible powers and wreaked havoc, death, and destruction before Neron was forced by Flash to halt their actions and return their souls to their bodies. HeatWave was only briefly would return to criminal ways before abandoning them to study with Zutanian monks. Afterwards, he worked for Project Cadmus as a backup agent, but eventually quit and moved to the Quad City, Illinois area. He eventually got a job at the FBI, along with other reformed members of Rogues. This was a spectacular failure, and Rory became a villain once again after the Top arrived and undid the mental program that had kept him reformed. Jeez. Alright. Now, okay, so that's HeatWave's origin. It was a lot to take in, I know. But, basically, HeatWave is just a pyromaniac with a gun that produces heat. The way the Flash TV show, if you watch the Flash, the way the Flash mentions the heat gun, it fires some sort of product that ignites upon contact with the air. So, flamethrower basically. But it's the most powerful flamethrower in existence, from what I understand. It is a very strong device. It is a very fire, like, it produces Planck temperature fire, which is absolute zero is the coldest that something can be. Planck temperature is the hottest something can be, from what I understand. Now, there's a little education for you. Why do I love HeatWave so much? Because HeatWave is a very simple character. He doesn't have all of Superman's powers, and he doesn't have billions of dollars like Batman to become Batman, and he doesn't have this, that, or the other. He's just a dude, likes fire. I like fire. I'm not a pyromaniac. I'm not going to start lighting stuff on flames all over the place. But he's just a dude, likes fire, and knows what he wants. I like his attitude. I like his costume is cool to me. I mean, it's sort of old school comic booky. I even like what they sort of did with him in new continuity, where he became the flamethrower. So it's like shooting out of his chest. Kind of like how Captain Cold uses ice from his hands instead of his gun. But I do like the idea of the heat gun. It's a really unique thing. And I like the design they gave it on the Flash. I like that they brought HeatWave to the Flash. Now, to answer this, I don't like HeatWave because of the Flash. I want to get that out there. I don't like HeatWave because of I love him on the Flash, and I think the Flash is doing him justice as a character. He was underutilized in season 1 of Legends. I wish they'd used him more on the Flash. And I'm glad that they made HeatWave and Captain Cold a team on the openings of the Flash instead of having them be enemies right off the bat. I'm not going to spoil too much, but it seems like that's what they're gearing up towards in Legends. So there's that. Now, I don't have it written down, but I have it basically memorized how, excuse me. Ow. How I would, how would I design HeatWave? Well, I would give him an Injustice overhauled redesign just like they have in they did Captain Cold. In the Injustice 2, you see Captain Cold. He's all decked out with his armored parka, whatever. What I would do is I would mix the new, I believe it's New 52, the HeatWave with the jacket, and just the jackets, jeans, and the black boots, the sort of military boots, and the heat goggles. I would mix that look with some military-esque stuff. So basically, he would have these grenades on his belt. He would have his heat gun, obviously, would be right there on his hip. He would have, now, I'm going to mention something and then what I would do or not do with it. One of the traits that I gave him, an idea for a trait that I gave him, was to go from using the gun to switching to his chest wave thing. I think that would be a cool idea if you went from using gun-based heat attacks to the fire literally coming from him. That would be interesting to me. Be very interesting to me. I am excuse me. I would have him his fighting style, I would have him be a very beat down in your face character. I would have him be very almost Jax-esque without the big arms. Very beat down heavy. Very knees to the gut, very punches to the face, very, I don't know. A lot of boots, a lot of boot action I feel going on. Just, it'd be interesting to see. A lot of his work, though, is going to be with his gun. Now, his heat gun, I would have him do just a normal straight wave, so it would go from like here across. You could do a spiral that could pop him up. You could do across the ground traps. Basically, there's some cool tricks you can do with the heat gun. Now, how do you make him not just another Firestorm or not just whatever? Here's what I would do. I would have him be a pyrotechnic. He would use stuff like a flare. He would use a flare. You would take a flare and flare it in your opponent's face for a free hit. You would you could give him little incendiary grenades that he rolls across the ground that explode at your opponent's feet. You could give him napalm. A napalm grenade where he throws it on them and it just starts to burn them for damage over time. You could give him all sorts of fun stuff like that. You have to give him a headbutt in his moveset. Just whap! One good solid headbutt. To the head, to the chest, but there needs to be a headbutt in there. And a lot of his special moves are basically going to be based around his fire. A lot of his combos are going to end with his heat gun. Now, the other trait I gave him is his heat gun's intensity. Basically, you can crank up the heat gun intensity from like 1 to 3. We'll go 3 as the cap, because that seems to be the cap for increasing levels. So we'll go the third level. It does the most damage his heat gun does, but if you use that level, it stops working for a little bit, and you have to rely on his other combos to use him. Napalm grenades and such. And I feel like these grenades would be very... I want to say they would be limited. Like, they don't just come from nowhere. He would have to have some stuff that you could use all the time. Like, I would give him a fireball, like a Molotov cocktail he could just throw out of nowhere and just hit the opponent. There's just a lot of fun fire stuff you can do with HeatWave. Now, of course, you're going to have the head, shoulder, and his gun is going to be his fifth thing. Like, for gear, you're going to have the head, the goggles, the whatever, the shirt, jeans, boots, like you always do. Then, I would have his fifth one, his item, be his gun. You can change to different guns, like you can use the Flash TV version, you can use an actual flamethrower, you can use all sorts of different flame gun design, heat gun designs for, for HeatWave. You could use all sorts of them, but you would have to make the Flash heat gun like a legendary piece, like one of the top tier pieces. I mean, just because it's so like embedded in people's minds, you'd do that and his original one. There's just so much fun stuff that you can do with HeatWave. HeatWave's story in the game. I would put HeatWave on the Society. In my Injustice 2 story, the Society is still a thing. I would put HeatWave in the Society, and I would have Captain Cold lead one team, and HeatWave lead another. I don't know who's all on the teams yet. Those are still up in the air. But you have HeatWave lead a team, and Captain Cold lead a team, and at some point, these two teams must fight. Because I just think Captain Cold versus HeatWave, if they're going to be in the game, has to happen at some point. Unless they're going to put HeatWave in the game as a skin of Captain Cold, which I've talked about before, that they can do it that way. But this is, I really have a lot to discuss with HeatWave, but if you have any more questions, feel free to ask me them. But this is going to be the end of my first fantasy draft. How did I do, guys? What do you think of this concept of the fantasy draft? What do you think of me jumping onto characters and how they would play and moves that they would have and things like that? Real quick, I want to mention there'd have to be a tackle. I just love the idea of HeatWave just randomly jumping and tackling somebody. And then you could tackle, pick them up, and then shoot fire in their face. Be awesome. And then little heat traps and stuff. There's so much to do. But this is going to be my first fantasy draft video talking about HeatWave. Boo me if you want to, whatever. HeatWave. But this has been all for this video, guys. As always, I appreciate you watching. Every view is appreciated. And until next time, guys, you guys have been Super Friends. I've been SuperDude here in the Fortress of Brotude, located on the outskirts of Central City, where HeatWave operates. And until next time, guys, I'm saying up, up, and away.